this hour. He was on my podcast yesterday. I love catching up with him, caught up with him probably for 5 or 6 straight years after the draft. You'll hear him. And by the way, when I say Scott McLuhan, yeah, he's a former GM, but he consults many teams in the NFL on their draft. So he'll give us his thoughts on Washington's draft. And per usual with Scott, you get some stories from the past as well. So he's coming up this hour. I'll play a portion of it from my podcast yesterday. We'll keep you posted, golf fans, on the PGA Championship at Quail Hollow, which is underway. Luke Donald is 4 under. Been a while since anybody has said that name. And local, Denny McCarthy is 2 under through 6. So, right now, where's Rory? Rory has teed off, hasn't he? I think he has.
He teed off at like 8:20 this morning. I was keeping an eye on it earlier.
He's +1 through 8.
Ugh, he was even last I looked, but yeah,
but it's bunched
now.
up. The leaders right now at 4 under par. Donald, Ryan Fox, and Steven Yeager are all at 4 under par. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. We'll do your over-under pick, over-under 9.5 games, and your big takeaway from the schedule. For me, I'm going over 9.5. I think this team, the biggest question mark is defense. I don't know what it'll look like, but I think they could be a better team offensively than they were last year, which is scary. But I also think they could end up winning fewer than 12 games. We'll see. But I think this is a team that's going to win more. This is a better than 500 team and a contender for a playoff berth. Very much so, I think, and maybe a deep into the playoff contender again. And they got treated that way schedule-wise. For me, the biggest takeaway really is 4 games against teams coming off byes. Now, Denver is coming off a bye when they play Washington, but Washington's also coming off a bye, so there's no net rest disadvantage there. But 3 other games against teams coming off byes, which could work to Washington's disadvantage. Chicago, Seattle, and the Giants, along with Denver, all 4 teams are coming off byes. All right, 301-230-0980. Let's go to Billy. Billy, over under 9.5 wins, and what was your biggest takeaway from the schedule?
Kevin, good morning. I know you're a basketball, but in the hockey, you got the McDavid run here, and he's having an all-timer. So I know that some of the games are late, but just something for the fans to consider. One of the great players probably since Gretzky, hopefully going to get his first cup. I couldn't be happier with the struggles that you've alluded to for the Giants. As you know, 2012, 2013, Mara very instrumental in the penalties against Washington, the salary cap, and I'm happy to see him struggle.
2011.
I think it was. Pardon me.
2011.
2011.
Yeah.
2011. I always get that wrong.
That's all right. 2011 was the uncapped year. The penalties came in 2012. After the 2011 season. Yeah. After they had made the trade with the Rams to pick our RG3.
It's a very disappointing.
We're all over
that
the
they
place
moved
right now, per usual. With
Barkley over. They moved Barkley over to the Eagles. That was a huge mistake. So we blame the Mara family for at least one of the Eagles Super Bowls. I think the NFL sees what I see, which is a crescendo at the end of the season. The Washington football team will probably be 15-0 after that first Eagles game, and probably 17-0 after that second Eagles game, and that'll be something that the whole league is focused on. I don't see the 72 Dolphins.
Yeah,
I don't see the 72 Dolphins on the schedule or the 78 Steelers. I see this team going 17-0, Kevin, and I think that's for your listeners out there. We all have gambling available to us. Take a flyer on Commanders going 17-0. I don't know what the odds are. I haven't looked
they're long
yet, but
they're long.
Yeah, they got to be long. It's a tough
They'd
thing
be
to
long
accomplish
for even the Chiefs.
It would be long for the Chiefs, but we have a better quarterback than the Chiefs do. So that's why I think it's more likely we'd go 17-0. So, no downside this year. Just looking forward to a joyous rebirth of the Commanders, and they should change the name by the start of the year here because we certainly don't want the Commanders.
That might happen, too. Yeah, 17-0, the name change before the season starts. I think the very first part of the call in which I think you were referring to Connor McDavid, correct?
Yeah, Connor McDavid, yep.
Did he score the goal in overtime last night? He did not. But you like Edmonton to win the Cup?
I'd love to see him win the Cup. I don't know if there's a special on about him and them losing the Cup in the finals, and it was just very, very enlightening in the way that he approaches the game and his passion for the game. And I'm a hockey, I'm not a basketball, so I just love the way the hockey playoffs play. And I know you're a hockey playoff guy too, Kevin. So
I like the playoffs in hockey. I like the NBA much more, but I like the hockey playoffs. I'm glad we started off with that on the schedule talk segment with you. You're great at sticking to the actual subject.
17-0.
17-0.
I'm sorry, John. I'm sorry. Dart's probably not going to work out for you the way JD5 worked out for us. But maybe next year you'll get one in the draft. You'll probably be in a 4-13, 5
Billy, here's the one thing I don't think we should do as a fan base. Get chesty quite yet and start knocking because there was a bit of a run with us being at the very bottom, looking up at the other three teams in the division. Maybe we should have more than one good season in a row before we start knocking everybody else. Unless you've just been waiting so long to take pot shots at teams like the Giants, because we've been the whipping boy for so long. Thank you, Billy in Chantilly. Mark in Largo, over or under 9.5 wins, and what was your big takeaway from the schedule?
I got them going over. In fact, Kevin, I got them being 10-1 going into the bye. I don't think they'll go 17-0. I think they'll lose that game against.
You don't think they'll go 17-0?
No,
you're out on a limb on that one.
But let me say this, Kevin. They hadn't lost the game since November, so this team was familiar with winning outside, of course, in a title game. Of course, the NFC title game would get it, but they are learning. They ended the season strong. Okay, they ended the season strong. And I think I got them going 14-3. Now, here's the deal. When they take the tush push away next week, it'll knock Philadelphia down from at least 12 wins, probably to about 10 or 9 wins. I hate to say it, but
you think the tush push could cost them 3 wins?
I think it'll cost their running game, and that means Jalen Hurts will have to throw more. And if he has to throw more, that's the problem. He is a play-action passer, Kevin. He is someone that lives off the run to make him look good. He's not someone that can sit up and throw 40. So I would even say 30 to 35 times. Now, I love Jalen Hurts.
I do too. But I agree with what you just said about his play.
Right. If they ban a tush push, that's gonna paralyze Philadelphia's somewhat running, and it's going to be able to focus on what they need, what they can and cannot do. And I think
you know what, Mark? I'm not going to cut you. I'm not going to cut you off. Leave Mark right there because I want to hear the rest of it. I like when Mark calls. Part of me worries about what could happen with no tush push. Instead of on 3rd and 2, and then on 4th and 1 going tush push. Instead, you get Saquon Barkley against a goal line defense. How many times is that going to end up in a house call? I actually think in many ways, given they had Barkley last year, that they would have been better off overall just running Barkley on 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1.
Well, Kevin,
could be wrong.
Hey, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
But Kevin, here's the thing. We all knew when Frankie Louvu for 4 straight times tried to jump over and stop it. And then at the last play, the official said, if they keep doing this, we're just going to award them a touchdown. See, that right there said, okay, yeah. I was telling everybody, they're going to get rid of this after this year. I'm going to tell you that right now. After that,
we're going to find out this month. We're going to find out by the end of this month in this next league meeting.
Here's the reason why I think they'll go 14-3. I think they'll lose to Denver coming out of the bye because I think that'll be a tough tough game, but it'll be a close loss to them, and then they'll lose the last game of the season to Philadelphia. But I hate to say it.
Who's their one loss to getting to 10-1 by week 11?
Oh, Kansas City.
Okay.
Kansas City. They'll lose Kansas City in Kansas City. Then they'll lose to Denver. Then they'll lose to Philadelphia, and then they'll beat San Francisco in the NFC Championship, which would be great for Adam Peters and the Washington area. And they'll hoist the Lombardi Trophy, beating you know who, the Buffalo Bills.
All right.
And I know I don't think that's far-fetched saying them going to the Super Bowl and winning it. I think it was.
Well, it's certainly not far-fetched compared to previous years. That's true. And by the way, 14-3, you got to 14-3 after 10-1. I mean, that's well over their over-under number for the year. But
True.
This is a league.
Look, Kevin,
even though we saw a defensive champ, hold on. Even though we saw a defensive champion last year, this is still a league where if you are elite offensively, you're going to win a lot of games. And you're going to have a chance.
Absolutely.
And I think they're going to be elite offensively again. I do.
And I'm going to tell you something, Kevin. That kid, I'm going to tell you why they're going to go 14-3. That kid they picked up in the 7th round. That kid, Bill Merritt, who likes to be called Bill because he said that on Chris's show.
Yeah.
That kid Merritt is going to be a steal. And if he's a steal, with him back there, with Jaden, Debo, and Jalen, along with Scary Terry and Zach, Jalen's got more toys this year than he had last year.
Well, I hope you're right about Bill Merritt. I do, because that would be quite the steal. Like I've mentioned before, not that this means, anything other than just playing the odds game. Out of the last 33 7th-round running backs taken over the last 10 years, one has made an impact in the NFL. That's Isaiah Pacheco. One. So the odds are stacked against it. I like the player after watching him on tape. And maybe had he had a full year at Arizona this year rather than being ruled ineligible, maybe he would have been a 4th or 5th round pick. Who knows? So there is that as well. Mark,
I agree with you.
Thanks as always. Let's go to Bobby.
Oh, no problem.
My guy Bobby in North Carolina. Bobby, over under on 9.5 and your biggest takeaway from the schedule.
Hey, buddy, that Kool-Aid's good in the DMV this morning on them last 2 calls.
They are drinking it.
17-0 and 14-3. Hey, I've been wild and outlandish, over the years predicting, but if we could do something like that, it'd be amazing. But going back to your question, 9.5, I think we will be over, Kevin. But, the defense is going to be the key to all this, just like you already said. If the defense can improve and just be middle to pack, I could see us winning 11 or 12 for sure. Offensively, we will be elite with the additions to the offensive line and getting Debo back there. It's going to be pretty fun to watch. But the defense is going to carry this team this year, to get us to our win total for sure. And as far as the schedule last night, we all knew there was going to be a bunch of primetime games, so that came to fruition there. But you've already talked about the last 3 games, 2 to 3 against the Eagles. I don't like that. And then the one being on Christmas Day, I definitely don't like that just because, you're going to have to rearrange the schedule for Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Or Dallas, you're right. But Dallas, but I was hoping that was going to be a 4:30 game, but unfortunately it's going to be 1 o'clock. So there's going to have to do some shuffling on my schedule Christmas Day for sure to be in front of the TV at 1 o'clock. But we'll make it work. You know that. Right?
Yeah, the Christmas Day thing is definitely, and I could see and feel this last night, it is very split. There are a lot of people that just don't like it. And I understand that, especially if you've got young kids, but 1 o'clock in many ways, every home is different. 1 o'clock was always sort of like the lull, the beginning of the lull period, where it's like, all right, before we get ready to go wherever we're going for dinner, all the presents have been opened, kids are playing with stuff, and there was always this lull between like 1 and 4. I think it's actually the perfect time for a Christmas Day game, but everybody celebrates differently, and certainly there are a lot of people that don't celebrate and couldn't care less. But it's
typically in the South, we do that 1 o'clock. We do lunch. You know what I'm saying? And then you go somewhere else for the afternoon. So, but either way, we'll make it work. But Kevin, I am bullish on the team, though, all joking aside. Our offense, if we can keep number 5 upright, it's got a chance to be very, very special this year. And, hopefully Lattimore's going to work out. Hopefully the additions on the defensive line are going to work out. I'm excited about McGee playing linebacker. I think they're high on him, and it's going to be interesting to see what he can contribute to the defense. But
agreed.
It just feels so good. We've been down in the dumps for so long, but now our team is relevant. And hearing it, national people talk about our squad. I'm definitely not like Billy being 17-0 in the previous call of 14-3, but just to be considered up there with the elite teams is going to be pretty fun, man. We all deserve this after the run we've had the last 25 or 30 years.
No doubt.
Brother. Hope you're doing well, man.
Thanks as
right.
always.
Take care.
Yep. I'm looking at the 2000 schedule. The last time that there was legitimate high expectations, I mean, it's a long time, a quarter of a century, since last time you went into a season with legitimate high-end expectations. That year, you had so many big-time 425, for that 4 o'clock window. You had prime time 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 primetime games that particular season. 6 of them heading, in the schedule heading into it. Let's go to Gary. Gary in Upper Marlboro. Gary, over under 9.5, and then your biggest takeaway from the schedule was what?
Okay, good afternoon or good morning.
Hey, Gary.
I got to be, I think they're under, okay? And here's the reason why. If they go out and get Trey Hendrickson, okay, which I'm not a big fan of to do because I think they're going to have to give up too much, then I can do the over. But I just don't think they've done anything really good to address the defense. And last year, they played the worst set of quarterbacks in football.
No doubt.
They were terrible. They're not going to have the benefit of that this year. And because they haven't upgraded the defense, I think that they're going to struggle against in a lot of these games. I think they're going to be tight games. I think the offense is still going to average 27 to 29 points per game, but I am not that bullish on the receiver on Debo. Okay, if you look at him, his highlights from last year compared to previous years, he is clearly slowed down. So I don't know.
Well, he was hurt too. He's been injured. Yeah, he hasn't played healthy. And I think that's part of the problem because the way he plays like a running back. He's a 30-year-old running back. And there's been some issues with, how good of a shape, how good his conditioning's been going into years.
Yeah. I think that part he'll take care of. Okay. I think he'll be in shape, but I just think he's a 30-year-old running back. And so I'm not so sure they're going to be that much better on offense. But Kevin, you said this many times. It's the quarterback that you're playing against. And that run of quarterbacks last year was not good, and they were still a middling defense.
Yep.
And I don't think they've upgraded the defense that much, where I just think they've moved pieces around, replace this guy, will replace this guy, but I don't think they've fully upgraded. So I have them under. That 0.5 is what's getting you. I don't see them getting to 10 wins.
Okay.
I just think they're going to be, and the Cowboys. The Cowboys almost beat them twice last year without Dak Prescott, with a guy named Cooper Rush. And
Trey Lance.
I think they're under. And Trey Lance, exactly. And they almost lost to Atlanta last year with the kid starting his first game on Monday night.
They almost lost to Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Kevin. With that defense, I don't think that defense has been upgraded this year.
It has to be better if you're gonna make. Look, it's simple, right? To get to the Super Bowl, more times than not, you got to play the majority of your playoff games at home. To get into that position, you got to win the division, which means you've got to beat Philadelphia. You got to match them in wins and win a tiebreaker, or you got to win more games than they do. The only way over an 18-week, 17-game schedule, I think you're going to win more games than Philadelphia this year, barring, catastrophic injuries for either side, is you got to be much better than you were last year on defense. Because I think offensively, year 2 in Kingsbury with The additions of Tunsil, I disagree with you on Samuel. I think this is a contract year. It wouldn't surprise me if he has a big year. But they've got to be better on defense. And defense is hard to predict year to year. This one's got to be much better because of at least going in what we think we're going to face quarterback-wise and offense-wise. If you're going to win 11, 12, 13 games and end up with at least 2 of your playoff games at home. Thanks, Gary, for the call. Let's go to Little. Little, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Kevin, thank you for taking my call. Gary,
sure.
I don't know where you're coming from, Gary, but you way offline. Hey, look, I totally agree with Mark from Landover. Shout out to Mad Max, too. Hey, look, Kevin, let me say this now. We talking about the rest factor. Man, we got a quarterback, JD5, Stone Cold Killer 2.0. This is what the NFL going to get this year. They go to bed between 8 and 9 p.m. every night, I'm pretty sure, because the kid is up at 4:30, I know. So we ain't worried about that rest factor when it come to him. I'm going with 14-3. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to piggyback off what Mark Milano was saying, but guess what? That game in Philly going to be for the championship. I called it last year. And guess what? We're going to Philly before to play for that championship for the first, to get that home field advantage. I called it out last year, but we didn't get the home field advantage. But we're going to roll with it all the playoff this year. Trust what I believe in, Kevin. God bless you. Stay up, big fella.
All right, Little. Appreciate it. Let's go to Lou to finish it up. Lou, go ahead.
Hey, man. Hey, Kevin. Good morning, man. How you doing?
I'm good, Lou.
Shout out to Little, man. Yeah, I gotta say the dude from Upper Marlboro, man. I don't know what he be drinking, but he's way off, Kevin. What are you talking about? Under 9.5? I got 15-2.
Well, Gary's entitled to his opinion, and he spelled it out as to why you're playing, at least right now, a much different slate of quarterbacks and offenses than you faced last year. And the defense was subpar against subpar competition last year. So if the defense isn't significantly better this year, and you end up facing Mahomes, Herbert, Dak twice, which you didn't have to face, Goff in Detroit's offense, Green Bay's offense, and Jordan, it's totally a fair and logical way to get to, right around 9. I don't have a problem with that. I'm concerned about the defense too. Now, my one strong belief is this is an offensive league, even though the Eagles won a title with defense. Their offense was pretty good too. They had Saquon Barkley, but I think that Washington's offense is literally elite, like top 3, top 4, top 5. And that if they have that, and I believe they will, I can't see them winning less than 10. So that's where I am. But it's not a crazy position to take, Gary's position.
Yeah, but I just think I know people might disagree, but I think we upgraded on the defensive side of the ball. I think, Dietrich, the big boy from, the local guy from here, talking about the offensive side, just the defensive side of the ball. You got Kinlaw. You got Jonathan Jones. You got the safety, Will Smith from
Will Harris. I hope you're right. I hope you're right that they've upgraded on defense, but they certainly didn't splash defensively. But maybe, Kinlaw, who hasn't played well recently, and Wise and Goldman, who actually missed some time in the NFL here in recent years, and Harris over, Chin and Jones and Amos. Hopefully it results in a better defense. It'd be hard to be a lot worse than they were last year against the run in particular, but I'm not convinced. I need to see it. They didn't add Myles Garrett. If we had added Myles Garrett in a trade, then I would have been really excited to see what this defense looks like. There are players I'm excited to see. Luvu year 2, Armstrong year 2. I thought he finished really strong. It would not surprise me if Duran steps up in a quasi-contract year, meaning he could see the same fate John did if he doesn't have a big year. But yeah, there's nothing that screams out loud, oh my God, they did so much defensively. They're going to be great defensively next year. I don't see it that way. Doesn't mean I'm going to be right. So, Lou, you there? We lose Lou.
We lost him.
Okay. All right. Good calls. 17-0. Wow.
17-0 is crazy.
17. If they win, I'll tell you, there are a couple of games that I'm really looking forward to.
Kevin, if they
really
went 17-0, I'd run naked through the street. But continue.
Yeah, I'll share those games with you at 12 noon. A couple of games that I can't wait to see. When we come back, you'll hear part of my conversation yesterday with former Washington general manager Scott McCloughan. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. All right, joining me right now is Scott McCloughan. Love having Scott on the show after the draft. I think we've done this now a few years in a row, at least maybe 3 or 4 years in a row. Scott, by the way, is still doing a lot of consulting work with NFL teams on their draft prep. So, that's why we can't have Scott on before the draft, because he's actually working. But of course, Scott was the GM here in Washington in 2015 and 2016. Prior to that, the 49ers general manager for several years, the Seattle senior director of personnel for several years as well. Scott joins us right now. So real quickly, before we get to this draft and then specifically to Washington's draft, I know you're busy, year round, watching a lot of college games and a lot of college tape. About how many, I know you can't tell me which teams, but about how many teams are in the Scott McCloughan consulting group? How many teams are you helping out?
Quite a few, almost too many to tell you the truth. But
yeah.
It's all good. It keeps me busy. The thing about it is being a consultant. I'm not traveling. I'm not doing school calls. I'm not, I'm not doing combine. I'm not doing all-star games. I just sit here in my house. I watch tape and I write reports for them.
Do you miss it though? Do you miss not being able to call the shots?
I miss the fact of the partnerships you got with players.
Right.
You know, the relationships you made with them and their families. And that's what I miss the most. You know, calling the shots, anybody can try to do that. Anybody, you know, and you either good or you're bad. It plays itself out.
Right.
But, yeah, no, I just miss the relationships with the players and the coaches.
So there's no missing of being a part of something that when the games start in the fall, you've got a vested interest because you're working for that specific team.
No. I have a vested interest no matter what. I mean, I've been right now I'm with 5 teams and all 5 made the playoffs. And a couple of years ago, one won the Super Bowl. I've been to 6 Super Bowls now. I mean, I've been very lucky. I got 4 rings. You know, it's really cool. But yeah, I just, you know, it's, you know, when you get older and you know how life works, all of a sudden you get to the point where I got to deal with coaches are messed up or pissed off. I got to deal with secretaries that the guys, you know, whatever, staring at her different or whatever. I don't miss that at all. I just miss being on a practice field and then just watching tape and being with my scouts.
You worked with Dan Quinn. I'm sure I've asked you this before because I think you were on with me last year, but what do you think of the job Dan Quinn's doing in D.C.?
Phenomenal. And I'm telling you what, the guy's a stud. The guy, not just as a coach, you know, I get it. He's defensive minded. That's his background. I get it. You know, we lost Gus Bradley in Seattle. Dan took over.
Right.
We didn't break stride. But the thing about him is he's a better person off the field. All he wants to do is listen and learn. You know, and it's great. I'm telling you, it's great for the Commanders from the standpoint that he's that type of guy. You know, I was lucky enough to be with Mike Holmgren, and he was like 50-50, listening or not listening, which is fine.
Yeah.
I was young, you know. But then Pete Carroll, all he wanted to do is get information, and Pete Carroll taught Dan Quinn how to be a head coach, and it's legit. It's good stuff.
Did your paths ever cross with Adam Peters anywhere?
Oh yeah, on the road scouting.
Yeah, and
as college scouts. Oh yeah. No, we'd meet up at, you know, all of a sudden you go into a school and you start watching tape. You know, college, and you start watching tape, and then scouts come in. Oh yeah, no, he's a good guy, really good guy.
All right, so before we get to Washington's draft, which, you know, I and all my listeners are most interested to hear your thoughts on, what did you think of this draft going in? Like, how did you describe the draft to anybody that asked you before?
Well, first of all, it's always a good draft. It's what you make of it. It doesn't matter who's taking the first, who's taking the 7th. It doesn't matter. It identify what fits your scheme, what fits your culture, what fits your character. You know, 100%. I thought it was really deep in D-line, especially defensive tackles, which is very unique.
Yep.
And I think you saw them go. You know, so, but every draft's a good draft. You just got to make it a good draft. You know, you can say, well, there's nobody at the 5th round. I'm like, yeah, there is. I drafted many guys after the 5th round, end up being 10-year starters. You know, so I mean, it's what you make of it. You know, and the thing about with the Commanders this year, you know, just having 5 picks, it kind of handcuffs you.
Right.
You know, but still okay, because they made trades before and got good players and ended up having last year having a winning season, which is awesome. You know, my first year in San Fran in 2005, we had 14 picks. And 12 made the team. 12 made the team. They're like, you did a really good job. I'm like, no, our roster's that bad.
Right. You know, there was a lot of that last year with Quinn in terms of major turnover. from the year before. And you can get fooled by that, right? You can look at the players that you acquired via free agency and the ones that you drafted and assume after 1 year you did really well when in fact it was just a depleted roster going in.
Well, it's depleted, but also there's still football players there. But the thing about it is, you can think. I'll never forget my year in Seattle. I was a senior personnel executive with John Schneider, GM.
Yeah, and
they gave us the D. Great. All them players won a Super Bowl. So I'm like, well, I'll take a D every year. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I've said this many times before. As a fan, I don't think there's anything that we, embrace and obsess over that we know the least amount than the NFL draft. And I say that, Scott, and I say that with all due respect to people like you. The people that get paid to do this get it wrong more often than they get it right by a long shot. Hitting on a third or 40% is typically a pretty good hit if you look at it 3 years down the road. But still, we love it. But it is kind of a wild card kind of, exercise at times, right?
100%. I never forget when I first started, I was 24 years old with Green Bay. And Ron Wolf, who's the first GM to go in the Hall of Fame, told me, if you're right 1 out of 4, you're doing a hell of a job.
Right.
Hell of a job. He says, and I'm like, well, no, I'll be right 3 out of 4. He says, no, I'm just telling you, as the guy getting a second contract and the guy playing 10 years, that's a hit. If all of a sudden they're not getting a second contract, you're trading them or you're cutting them or whatever. And I'm like, wow, and at that time I was so young, I didn't. I'm like, oh, I'll be better than that. And I got in the big seat, and I'm like, he's 100% accurate. 100% accurate.
Yeah, yet we love it, and it's such a big part of kind of the NFL calendar. By the way, just that 2005, first year in San Francisco, was that the Alex Smith year?
Yep.
And so Frank Gore was in that class too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. You know what I didn't realize? I had Clinton on the show, Clinton Portis last week, I think. Yep. And, Frank Gore being a Miami guy, Clinton mentioned something to me, and I had no idea. Do you know where Gore ranks on the career rushing yards list in the history of the game?
Number 3.
Number 3. I certainly would have guessed top 10 somewhere. I'm like, number 3, are you sure? I'm pretty sure it's got to be Barry Sanders or it's got to be, Adrian Peterson. It is Frank Gore, and he was not that far away from catching Walter Payton for number 2. Right. But I don't think of, as a lifelong NFL fan, Frank Gore is a really good player. I don't put him in that Emmitt Smith, Walter Payton, Barry Sanders. For me, Eric Dickerson, Earl Campbell, to me, is one of the great running backs in the history of the game. I don't put him into that category. Do you?
Yes, 100%. If you knew what he went through, first of all, he the first year he wasn't a starter. We had Kevin Barlow, who I ended up trading to the Jets. And then Frank became the starter. But what he went through with how bad the offensive line was, you got to figure. When I got to San Fran, we had the first pick for a reason.
Yeah.
Plain simple. And I've been in Seattle before that, and I'd see every game, and we just dominate them. And so to see what he went through with the first 3 or 4 years of our offensive line, and Alex Smith, had an okay rookie year, had a really good second year and then, we ended up winning, I think, 5 or 6 games, and we were no good. And then the third year, he got hurt in the first freaking game. Guy I drafted in Seattle, my dumbass. But he was our entire offense. So if you're a defense, all you're doing is scheming against him.
Right.
And the son of the gun would not back down. He just kept running through him and running through him and running through him. I'm like, dude, you're gonna be okay.
Wow.
And he didn't know any better. He says, yeah, no, I got you covered. I'm like, gosh dang, dude, you had 35 carries. You know, because I had Trent Dilfer playing quarterback.
Oh, boy.
Oh, I went through 4 quarterbacks that year.
Gore's second year, you're saying?
It was his second year.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. By the way, it turned out to be his best year of his career.
Yeah. And thing about it, it was the worst offensive line he ever played behind, ever.
Wow. You know,
it was on him.
Back to Alex Smith for a moment. Again, maybe this is a repeat, and I've asked you this before, but I forget what the answer is if you've given it to me before. So, was Aaron Rodgers a consideration?
Yes, I'm going to say so was Braylon Edwards. Yeah, no, I had 4 guys that were intriguing, but I got phone calls from John Gruden, from Bruce Allen, before the draft. It's like, listen, no one's going to trade with you. And I was 34 years old.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I'm not playing. You know, I'm not a big, during the draft, I'm not a big trade guy. If I got a player, you know, if I don't have a player, of course I'll trade. But yeah, there's like, no one's going to trade with you. You got to take somebody. And I'll never forget, John Gruden told me, he said, it's not even close, because he just came out to California and stopped in Utah, worked out Alex, and then he went to Cal and worked out Aaron. And he says, it's not even close. You take Alex Smith, 100%.
All right, let's get to Washington's draft. What did you think of their first-round pick, Josh Connerly Jr., tackle from Oregon?
I like him. He's going to be a right tackle.
Yep.
And I think he'll play early. And he thing about it was, during the fall, I kind of watched him. He was kind of inconsistent at times. But then we got the Senior Bowl, like the one-on-ones and stuff. He showed me more athleticism than I thought he had. And if all else fails, you can move him inside the guard.
Was there somebody else on the board at 29 when they picked that you thought was a better fit for Washington?
Yeah, but I don't want to say it. But yeah, no, there were quite a few guys. But still, I wasn't disappointed in Connerly going there. Not at all. If you get an offensive tackle that can start day one, that's pretty cool.
Real quickly on sort of a position that we thought Washington would end up drafting. They didn't among their 5 picks, but we focused a lot on defensive end, edge, heading into the draft. How did you have them ranked? I'm just curious, like the first and second round guys. I'm assuming you had Carter number 1. Is that true?
Correct.
By the way, how do you see Carter? Do you see him as sort of transcendent, Micah Parsons, Bosa, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, or do you see him?
No. He doesn't have that structure. He's going to be a 3-4 outside backer, and which is fine. Don't get me wrong. And he's going to rush. That's the best thing he does. But he can also drop in coverage. If you make him a 4-3 end, they'll dominate him. They'll put a tight end over there with the tackle, and it's over. He's just not a real big guy. He's going to be maybe 240, maybe, if he's lucky. I think at his pro day he was like 232 or something.
So do you think that was too high for him?
No, because what are you looking at in the draft? Who else are you going to take? I mean, he'll be a good player. I just don't know if he'll be great. And you take a guy that early, you want him to be great. You want him to be Pro Bowls. You want him to be all pro. You want all that kind of stuff.
So what'd you think after Carter in terms of the defensive ends?
Jelon Walker. I think he's the same thing. He's more of a pass rusher, but a little bit undersized. Shamar Stewart, pretty freaking cool, because I watched a big-time tackle this last fall, and he gave him all he wanted. Now, they both won and lost back and forth, but it was pretty legit. I mean, he Shamar Stewart, now, I don't know about the background, that kind of stuff, which apparently there might be a little bit, but no, he got after it now. He got after it big time.
What did you think of Mike Green?
Again, undersized.
Yeah.
Very productive, sack-wise, in college. Very productive. On the medium conference, talent-wise. But yeah, it's a big man's game. And I'm telling you, these freaking tackles are getting 6'6", 330 pounds.
Yeah.
If you're 240, they just grab you and throw you down. It's like going against a kid.
Right. So is that, I'm assuming then the kid from Boston College, Ezaraku, you think he's too light?
You know what? I never was asked to watch him.
Okay.
I don't know him.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I watched the Tennessee kid. Now, very intriguing.
Pierce. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Very intriguing. But
all right. Well, let's go back to Washington's draft. So you liked Connerly, but you think at 29 you thought that there were other players there, but you really liked the player. What'd you think of their second round pick, Trey Amos, the corner from Ole Miss?
I like him. I like him. I like him. I gave him a good grade. I like his quickness. I like his twitch. I like his speed. I like his instincts. Is he going to be a shutdown guy? Probably not, but he's going to play.
Outside more than inside?
Both. Hopefully for them. Hopefully both.
Okay. Jalen Lane, they picked in the 4th round, wide receiver and punt returner from Virginia Tech. What did you know? What did you know about him?
He reminds me of Jamison Crowder, who I drafted.
Right.
but he's faster. He's faster than Jamison.
Yeah.
He's not overly productive this last year, and it wasn't so much his fault. It was the quarterback's fault. But he can run now, and the returnability helps out tremendously if he can do it. But I like him. He's Crowder. I love Crowder. And this guy reminds me of Crowder, but faster, which is really cool.
That 2015 draft, just because I'm a Maryland guy, I was screaming Diggs. And I know he had been hurt, and there were some injuries, and with Stephon, there were some issues too, off the field and character-wise and the whole thing. But
if I could tell you the story, I would, but I can't do it on radio.
I'm sure. Actually, I think that there were a lot of stories probably circulating about him. So was he just a guy that you didn't want to take the chance on, but because of the other stuff, not football stuff?
Yes, I was told I couldn't by the owner. He was sitting next to me when the scout told me about him.
And the owner, once again, lobbed in
everything.
Lobbed in his expertise, right?
Correct. He's like, we can't draft him. I'm like, dude, why did you say it in front of the owner? Let me game plan, because I wanted Diggs. He was the highest rated guy on my board at the time.
He really was. Wow.
Yep.
I don't think you've ever told me that. So you're saying in the 4th round when you took Crowder, he was the highest rated player on your board?
No, Diggs was the highest. But I couldn't take Diggs.
Right, that's what I'm saying. But I'm saying, was that in the 4th round when you got to the Crowder pick? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And Jay wanted no part of him. Zero.
Oh,
dude,
man.
Believe in me, man. This guy's gonna be a good player.
Did you like Tyler Lockett in that draft?
Yes. I'm so old now that I scouted his father.
Well,
I liked him too.
I think Lockett actually went, though, before Crowder. So I don't think you had a chance to take Lockett, but you obviously had a chance to take Diggs. All right. So you like Jalen Lane. You comp him to Jamison Crowder, a faster version. What do you know about their 6th round pick, linebacker / whatever? He might be a safety, Kane Medrano from UCLA.
Zero. You never watched him.
You didn't. Well, can I? Nope. I think if you'd watched him, I think you would have liked him, because one of your sayings that we repeat quite often and have over the years, in watching just his highlight reel, he's a football player. As Scott McLuhan would say, he's a football player. He's just got like that incredible anticipation, ability, where he kind of sniffs everything out a little bit early, and because of he's a playmaker. All right, so we'll move on from him. Do you know anything about their 7th round pick? Their running back?
Zero.
Okay, that's fine. But with that, I want to ask you about another position that I thought they would take, and I was hoping they would take before the 7th round. Did you like the running backs in this draft? Did you consider that position to be as deep as many others did?
Not up high, but mid rounds and late. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So did you view Genty as worthy of top 10?
No.
Did you view any of the backs worthy of first round?
Genty I did later on.
Right.
I wasn't, everybody's like, he's like Barry Sanders. I'm like, no, I've seen Barry Sanders live. In the NFL, we couldn't tackle him. Reggie White couldn't tackle him.
Right.
He's not Barry Sanders. But they have talent, and they'll play. Don't get me wrong. And I'm sure they'll start early and do all that stuff. But, yeah, I think,
Who was your comp for Genty? Did you have one?
Probably Emmett.
Emmett, interesting.
Yeah, he's got a little more explosion, but the thing with Emmett was, he ran between the tackles.
Yeah,
and he had great contact balance. They'd hit him on the hip, and it's like Frank, and then they would stay on their feet, and then another guy hit him on the other side of the hip, and they'd stay on their feet. And Emmett's, don't get me wrong, but he had 4 All-Pros blocking for him.
Right.
He had a Pro Bowl tight end. He had, Hall of Fame quarterback. Frank always tells me, he's like, if I could have ran behind Dallas's offensive line, think how many yards I would have had. I'm like, I hear you, but yeah. I'm sorry. I tried to fix as much as I could, but I couldn't. I did eventually, but it was like,
That was Scott McLuhan on with me yesterday on my podcast. By the way, if you want to listen to the rest of it, he has an opinion about Shedeur Sanders, and it is a unique one. Not totally unique, but it's worth the 10-minute listen on him going off on Shedeur Sanders. You can find that on my podcast at thekevinsheehanshow.com or on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get a podcast. All right, the 2 games that I can't wait to watch the most this year on Washington's schedule when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right, the Washington Commanders schedule is officially out. For the first time in franchise history, the Washington Commanders will play 8 standalone games this season. They are the only team in the NFL to wrap up their season with 4 divisional opponents. The Colts are apologizing to Tyreek Hill for a joke made in their schedule release video. The team said in a statement, quote, "We removed our schedule release video because it exceeded our rights with Microsoft and included an insensitive clip involving Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill. We sincerely apologize to Microsoft and Tyreek." The NBA, Celtics kept the Knicks at bay without Jason Tatum. Derek White made it rain with 34 points, shooting 7 of 13 from 3. Jaylen Brown had 26 points, 8 rebounds, 12 assists, and a 127-102 win. The Timberwolves closed out the Warriors 121-110. They await the winner of Oklahoma City and Denver. The Nats, they break the losing streak. They beat the Braves 5-4 to snap the 7-game skid. James Wood robbed Marcell Ozuna at the wall and hit an RBI double in the top of the 8th to lift the Nats to victory. They continue their series at 12:15 today. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave right now on the Fan. The Caps look to hold off Carolina tonight. Lars Eller is out of the lineup. Connor McMichael will move to center. Ryan Leonard and Taylor Radish will fill the wing spots to round out the roster. Pregame at 6:45 on 106.7 The Fan. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Yes, we are live now. Just open the app, type in the Team 980 and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
Couple of things about Washington's schedule that I haven't mentioned yet. I've got two what I would call absolute must-watch games on Washington's schedule. I've got a stretch of games where I think they have something to prove. And then I've got an early season game that I think will be a measuring stick game. So I'm going to start with the two must watches. This is a little bit sort of subjective in a matter of personal preference, but at Kansas City Monday Night Football, a matchup between Jaden Daniels and Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs and Washington, that in by the way, late October, Halloween week, leaves are changing. It feels like fall. That just feels like a massive NFL game this year. There are many of them. I mean, look at Kansas City's schedule. Kansas City has a week 2 game against the Eagles. They have Baltimore in week 4. Both of those games, by the way, sort of 4:25 big time windows, almost standalone windows. They got a game against Detroit on Sunday Night Football. And then they go us on Monday Night Football, and the following Sunday at home on the road against Buffalo. Not to mention they've got games on Thanksgiving Day at Dallas. They got a game against Houston on Sunday Night Football, and a late season, Christmas night game at home against Denver. I mean, the Chiefs, have so much of that all year long in their schedule. But two must watches for me at Kansas City on Monday Night Football. And then I would say certainly the first game against Philadelphia in what could be two incredibly important games at the end of the year. Again, I'll emphasize, I'm surprised that one of the two Philadelphia games is in the highest risk week of the season, week 18, where more often than not, you get at least one of the two teams in the game having nothing to play for. I'm surprised that Washington and Philadelphia are ending the season. But Saturday, week 16, December 20th, at home against Philly in the first opportunity against the Eagles in the rematch of last year's championship game, and potentially a massive late season matchup between two excellent teams vying for division supremacy and for big-time seeding stakes in the NFC. Those seem to be two must-watch games. I think the Detroit game in November is potentially a huge standalone game, but Detroit's one of those teams, just be aware, they're really good, and they were really good offensively last year. They weren't very good defensively at the end of the year. They've got two new coordinators. They play 7 games outside. They certainly seem like an indoor girl more than anything else. You never know what that team may look like. I mean, they play Green Bay, Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Kansas City on the road before they get to Washington in November. So I gave you two must-watch games. Here's a prove-it stretch for me, and it comes early in the season. They play in order. They play Josh Jacobs in the Packers on Thursday Night Football. They play the rookie Ashton Genty in a game against Vegas at home. And then they play Bijan Robinson in week 4. 3 consecutive weeks against 3 teams with potentially big-time running games and running backs. They couldn't stop Bijan Robinson. They couldn't stop any really good back last year. That is a 3-game stretch starting in week 2. That is a prove-it opportunity on their run defense.
And also, week 5 against the Chargers too, because I feel like they're going to be very run heavy with Harbaugh. They got Najee Harris in the mix. So I think that's going to be another one.
They have actually, and I looked at that, and it's more about Omarion Hampton than it is Najee Harris.
Yeah.
They drafted Hampton, but to your point, they go a lot of 12 personnel, 13 personnel heavy runs. So that's a good point too. But I was just thinking in terms of
superstar running backs,
level backs potentially. Jacobs, maybe Genty, and then Bijan Robinson. In a row early in the season. It's a good point to add the Chargers in there as a 4th straight opponent where they're going to try to run the football. But Washington, was not good enough against teams with elite running backs last year. They just couldn't get it done. It started in the second half of week 1 against Bucky Irving. You had, in the Arizona game that they were big winners in. You still had James Conner go for 6 yards per carry. You had problems against Derrick Henry, problems against Tyrone Tracy, actually, problems against Saquon Barkley, problems against Bijan Robinson, problems in the postseason against Jahmyr Gibbs and Saquon Barkley. So an early opportunity to kind of prove that your run defense is better than it was last year. And then I'm going to give you an early season measuring stick game, because last year, remember the game against Baltimore in week 6? That was after a 4-1 start, and you felt like, all right, I mean, you beat the Giants, you beat the Bengals on Monday Night Football, but then the Cardinals and the Browns, now you get Baltimore. And we looked at it as an early measuring stick game. Is this a team that's going to win more games than it loses and contend for a legitimate division, and a top, seed? Or is it going to be, in the mix for 9-8 or 10-7? They played well against Baltimore. They lost the game, but they played well, and Jaden looked the part against Baltimore in that particular week. How about this game? And you've already mentioned it. At L.A. to face the Chargers in week 5. That is a well-coached team. It's a big-time quarterback on the road in what should be a neutral environment. That feels like a game that you can win and might even be favored, although, wouldn't surprise me if it's like a pick'em kind of a game. I think that's a big spot because you come off the Giants, Vegas, and Atlanta in 3 of your first 4. You get Green Bay in a short week turnaround after week 1. Sometimes that kind of game, like the Philly game last year a little bit, was misleading on Thursday night. I think an early season measuring stick game is week 5 on the road against, I think, a Chargers team that will be a good football team. It'll be well coached. They have a good quarterback, and that could be a big test at 3-1. Let's just say they're 3-1. They lose to the Packers. They could be 4-0. But 3 of the first 4 games right now, you're a 7-point favorite against the Giants. You'll probably be at least that against the Raiders in week 3, and probably a field goal 4, 5, 6-point favorite on the road in week 4. So it's tough to kind of get beyond that and look at, measuring stick games because you don't know. But early in the season, I don't view the at Chargers the same way I viewed at Baltimore, but I think that's, an underrated spot and game on the schedule early in the season. All right. I wanted to talk a little bit about last night's NBA playoff games. Try not to lose you here, but how about Boston last night? Down 3-1 without their, star who ruptured his Achilles in game 4. Jason Tatum was on fire in game 4 when he ruptured his Achilles. I said yesterday, I don't think the series is over. I think Boston still has enough to win games, even against the Knicks down 3-1. Game was tight, third quarter, and they opened it up. And they were impressive, man. They did it without Porzingis. He had 1 point and 1 rebound in 12 minutes. Something's wrong with him. They haven't disclosed what the sickness is, but something's wrong with him. And then this dude, Luke Cornett, came in off the bench. If you don't know who Luke Cornett is, 7'1", 275-pound center, has been in the league for several years, has never really, had any sort of breakout opportunity. Went to Vanderbilt, bounced around in the NBA. Last night, he had a game. He came in off the bench, and in 26 minutes, he blocked 7 shots. 7. He had 10 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 block shots in 26 minutes. He was 5 for 5 from the floor. You get that kind of play from Luke Cornett moving forward, you don't necessarily need Porzingis. He's not going to stretch the floor like Porzingis. And then Derek White, man, can he shoot or what? Jaylen Brown is an absolute superstar who, let's not forget, he was the MVP of the NBA Finals last year. He was the MVP of the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Jason Tatum is great. Jaylen Brown is a superstar also, and a two-way superstar. 26 points, 12 rebounds for Jaylen Brown last night in the first game in this series without Jason Tatum. I 100% believe that the Celtics can go to New York tomorrow night, where tickets are going to be going for no less than $1,000 just to get into the rafters. And if you want to sit courtside, you can do it for $75K. You want a courtside seat at Madison Square Garden tomorrow night for Game 6, where they can put away the Celtics? $75,000. These are Super Bowl level ticket prices.
Chalamet's throwing out the dough.
What'd you say?
Timmy Chalamet's throwing out the dough, Kev.
Oh, it was a star-studded group.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Chalamet. I mean, everybody was there. And what's interesting is the difference between the LA celebrity crowd and the New York celebrity crowd. The New York celebrities, especially if they're New Yorkers, they're loud, raucous, and obnoxious. The LA guy, the LA scene, it's get there late, wine, cheese,
too cool for school,
corporate, too cool, not in New York. The other game last night was Warriors Timberwolves, and I ripped into Jimmy Butler for his game 4 performance. Well, I know that Steve Kerr says that he's still injured from the last series and that he had some sort of sickness. I don't care, man. You signed Jimmy Butler, you traded for Jimmy Butler so that, God forbid, you needed him to do one of his Jimmy Butler postseason performances. He did it. And man, did this guy go out meekly. He went out 14 points in game 4 on 9 total shots from the field. And last night, 17 points on just 11 field goal attempts. Now, he did get to the free throw line last night, but really not when it mattered. He was totally non-existent in the first quarter. He had some offensive rebounds. He had a couple of, defensive plays. I'm shocked at how much of a non-participant, when all he had to do with Steph out, all he had to do was win one game where he went off for 45 plus, a Jimmy Butler type of playoff performance to keep his team alive until Steph came back, and he couldn't do it. In game 3, he scored 33, but he went scoreless over the final 8.5 minutes. Minnesota's really good. If you haven't watched them, they are excellent defensively, and they're long and they're athletic. And Jimmy Butler, I was listening to Udonis Haslem this morning on the Greenberg show, Get Up on ESPN. And Jay Williams ripped into Butler and said, it's just unacceptable to have these kinds of performances when your team needed you to come through once and lead them to one win until Steph came back. And he didn't do it. And not only did he not do it, he didn't look interested in doing it. I've never seen a guy pass on more layups to pass out to non-shooters than Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler is one of the highest IQ players we've seen in this era. And he's passing out to Draymond Green to shoot threes. Draymond Green had 6 3-point attempts in the game last night. Jimmy Butler had 3. That's not what you want. You do not want to pass out to guys like, Pat Spencer, who was a lacrosse player, to shoot threes. What are you doing, Jimmy Butler? God, one of my all-time favorites this time of year. And he just went out in the strangest way I've ever seen a player go out. Maybe he legitimately was hurt and couldn't move. Maybe he was sick. I don't know. But Jordan didn't stop him. And look, Butler, Haslem made this point this morning. That's where I was getting to. Haslam, very familiar with Butler from Miami days. Haslam said, look, Jimmy Butler is one of the best to ever do it, especially this time of year. But he does it differently than LeBron or Kobe or, some of the great playoff performers. He does it with his brain, and he attacks weaknesses, and he waits, and he's patient for his moments. I've seen that over the years. I've also seen, 50-point performances in playoff games where they had to have him get 40 and he got 50, where he was just aggressive right from the beginning. And he said, unfortunately, Minnesota didn't have one weakness to attack defensively. And they had ridiculous athletes and long athletes, and they were leaning on him, and they were doubling him, and they had a different long-armed athlete on him all night long. True. Didn't stop him in the past, though. It stopped him in this series, and Golden State's out. And you got to wonder, is that it for Steph in terms of being on a potential deep into the postseason team, a playoff team? I think Steph, had he been healthy in this series, I still wonder whether or not Golden State would have won this series. I think Minnesota's just better, but we certainly wouldn't have seen the series end at this point. We'd be going probably to a 7th game. Tonight in the NBA playoffs, you get Nikola Jokic and Denver at home to try to force a 7th and deciding game. I've said that I think Oklahoma City's the best team top to bottom in the postseason, but they're inexperienced, and that's always an issue in the NBA playoffs. I kind of feel like if Oklahoma City doesn't win tonight in Denver, that they're in trouble in Game 7 at home, because there is a certain gentleman from a certain Baltic region, Serbia, who would be hell to deal with in a 7th and deciding game. I don't think Oklahoma City wants to see Jokic come in like he did in Game 5 and go for 44 and 15 and 5 and hope that the surrounding parts shoot like 2 for 17 from the 3-point line. I don't know if that'll happen in a Game 7 on the road. So if you're into the NBA playoffs and you want to see a dramatic 7th game here in this round, I think Denver's got the chance to do it if they can win tonight to force a 7th game in Oklahoma City. That would be a fascinating watch to see Jokic and Murray. They almost stole Game 5 with the supporting cast giving them nothing. Michael Porter was 1 for 7, 0 for 5 from behind the arc. Braun was 3 for 12, 2 for 8 from behind the arc. Yeah, really, really interesting matchup tonight. And then, of course, we've got the Caps tonight at home, trying to push this series to a Game 6 in Raleigh. There's been some news from the early morning skate around. We'll get to that next. Caps Canes tonight in Game 5 at Capital One Arena. And there was some news from the skate around this morning. Logan Thompson did not participate in this morning's skate, which raised some eyebrows as to whether or not there was an issue, especially after Washington added netminder Clay Stevenson from Hershey for tonight's game. So there was some concern there, but Spencer Carberry quickly shut it down, saying that actually Charlie Lindgren will be out tonight because of a personal family matter. So not necessarily out for sure, but there is some question about whether or not he will dress for tonight's game. So Logan Thompson, good to go. You know, in the history of the NHL playoffs, 32 times teams have come from 3-1 deficits down in the postseason to win. To kind of give you the difference between the randomness and the openness very much of the NHL playoffs versus the NBA playoffs, only 13 times in the history of the NBA playoffs have teams come from 3-1 deficits back to win series. So, 32 times in hockey, 13 in the NBA. So roughly 2.5 times it's happened more in hockey. The Caps will try to become the 33rd team to do that, although you have another series with the President's Trophy winning Winnipeg Jets down 3-1 to Dallas, looking to stay alive tonight at home as well. Last night, by the way, in the NHL, Edmonton ended Vegas's season with a 1-0 overtime win to win that series 4-1. And after Toronto won the first 2 games of their series with Florida, the defending champs, the Panthers have now won 3 in a row to take a 3-2 series lead. Last night in Toronto, 6-1 was the final. Florida looks pretty good to me from afar, Max. Like, that might be the toughest matchup for either Washington or Carolina. Carolina more likely than not Washington if they can make a comeback. But tonight, I mean, you got to see better power play, productivity. You got to see better 5-on-5 in terms of time spent in the opposing team's zone. Alan May on with us the other day said you got to shoot the puck at the net.
Please.
He's actually all in favor of the high volume shot attempt philosophy of Carolina, and he wants to see that from the Caps tonight. So tonight, 7:00, Washington and Carolina. That's a TNT broadcast tonight, of course, with the locals, Joe B, Locker and company, out on that. I don't know if anybody saw this going back to the NFL. Doesn't have anything necessarily to do with the schedule, although I will reference the schedule here in a moment. Jim Nantz made a plea for Aaron Rodgers to go back to Pittsburgh. He said, now part of it is because Jim Nantz and Tony Romo, CBS games, they got a heavy, Pittsburgh presence on CBS. And he said, I don't know if you're watching, Aaron Rodgers. I hope you are. But I want you to know, just a few of my colleagues and some of my friends, we want to see you in the Steel City this season. We need the Steelers to be good. In looking at the Steelers' schedule, the one that the NFL gave them, they gave them a home game on the road against the Jets to open up the season. That would be Aaron Rodgers' last team. And they put a Pittsburgh Green Bay Packer game on Sunday Night Football, October 26th in prime time. So you would think that the league scheduling games against the Jets in the opener, they've got Pittsburgh hosting an international game. That's been set for a while. They got a game at Cincinnati in prime time on Thursday night, a game against the Packers in prime time on Sunday night. They got the Steelers against the Chargers on Sunday Night Football in prime time. They've got a late season standalone 4:25 game against Buffalo. They've got them in prime time on Monday night against the Dolphins late in the season. You would think that they are believers that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback in Pittsburgh. I believe that. I see that happening for sure. I'd be really surprised if it doesn't. Who are they going to play at quarterback? You can't enter a season with Mason Rudolph at quarterback. If Rodgers decided to bail on the season and potentially retire, hate to bring up his name because there's so many people that get triggered by this name, but I would expect Pittsburgh to really then go hard after Kirk Cousins. You can't enter a season without, in Pittsburgh with the roster they have, without some veteran presence at quarterback. And right now their depth chart goes Mason Rudolph and then Will Howard, the rookie from Ohio State, and Skylar Thompson. Mason Rudolph apparently is a wonderful guy, but he's, I think Scott McLuhan told me on the podcast yesterday, you didn't hear this part, but he said, love Mason Rudolph as a guy. You go 6-11 with him as your starting quarterback. And remember, they drafted Caleb Johnson from Iowa. They traded for DK Metcalf. They still have defensive talent. They added Darius Slay in the offseason. You don't go into a Pittsburgh season thinking anything other than the coach will get us to 9 wins. If we have a quarterback that can just play a little bit, we might get to 10 or 11. So that was Jim Nantz making a plea for Aaron Rodgers to return to the league into Pittsburgh. He's obviously become very much an insufferable figure. I get it. I still think that his season last year, that people slept on it in terms of its effectiveness. I had somebody on, I forget when it was, after the season, probably sometime in February or March before free agency began. I had somebody on from New York, a Jets guy, and he talked about the same things that I really felt were true about the Jets season last year. It was their defense and their kicking game that cost them a good season, not Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers played at a better than average level and got much better as the season went along. Coming off that Achilles injury, there is some adjustment period. And he had that last year. And then by the end of the year, he was slinging it, with, by the way, Devontae Adams as part of the mix. I don't know. There's always a chance at 1 years old, right? 41, is that what he is? That he could fall off the cliff completely, but I don't think he fell off the cliff last year. All right, we got a couple of other things we want to get to. We'll get to those when we come back. Also, we will give you a PGA Championship first-round leaderboard update when we return. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. If you've been thinking about new windows, do it now before the summer heat gets here. Window Nation's got energy-efficient windows that will save you big during the hot summer days ahead. They'll keep your house cool. They'll keep the cool air in. Your air conditioning bills will be lower than they were with your existing windows. Window Nation has some of the best energy-efficient windows out there. Their windows frequently outperform and outlast the ones from the expensive guys. Their windows are assembled right here in the U.S. of A. Make a smart investment. You do it now, you'll save money for years to come. Not to mention, there's no risk. Window Nation offers a lifetime warranty on all their windows. Right now, their semi-annual sale gives you a chance to purchase windows at 60% off. And for 2 years, you won't pay anything. No down payment required, no payments required, and no interest charged until the year 2027. If you buy a house full of windows, you'll get a free entry door. I trust Window Nation. They've got an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. They've got a 96% customer satisfaction rating, and they've got over 45,000 5-star reviews. They were recently ranked the highest on Forbes' list of the best window installation companies. You can trust Window Nation for high-quality, affordable windows. Hurry, this sale ends. Don't overpay for expensive windows that may not be as good. Schedule your fast, free home estimate right now with the pros at Window Nation. 866-90Nation, windownation.com.
All right, the Commanders' schedule is finally out with the schedule released last night. For the first time in franchise history, the Commanders will play 8 standalone games this season. They are the only team in the NFL to wrap up their season with 4 divisional games. The Colts are apologizing to Tyreek Hill for a joke made in their schedule release video. Team said in a statement, quote, "We removed our schedule release video because it exceeds our rights with Microsoft and includes an insensitive clip involving Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill. We sincerely apologize to Microsoft and Tyreek." The NBA Celtics kept the Knicks at bay without Jason Tatum. Derek White made a rain with 34 points, shooting 7 of 13 from 3. Jaylen Brown had 26 points, 8 rebounds, 12 assists in a 127-102 win. The Timberwolves closed out the Warriors last night, 121-110. They await the winner of Oklahoma City and Denver, who will get underway tonight. The Nats, they break the streak. They beat the Braves 5-4 to snap a 7-game skid. James Wood robbed Marcell Ozuna at the wall and hit an RBI double at the top of the 8th to lift the Nats to victory. Right now, the Nats are playing against the Atlanta Braves. They are tied 0-0 in the bottom of the 2nd. The Caps look to hold off the Carolina Hurricanes tonight. Lars Eller will be out of the lineup. Connor McMichael will move to center. Ryan Leonard and Taylor Radish will fill the wing spots to round out the roster. Pregame at 6:45 on 106.7 The Fan. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, and hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that's what's trending.
Seth Wickersham, one of the best, sort of investigative reporters and sports reporters in recent years. We know that Seth Wickersham, Don Van Natta, had a lot of those stories, remember, during all of the investigation and congressional hearing years for us to deal with. He's got a book coming out titled American Kings, a biography of the quarterback. It's a book that deals with a lot of the quarterbacks in the league, but specifically Caleb Williams. And some of the excerpts from this book are unbelievable. I'm going to read some of it to you. First of all, the, sort of summary of the Caleb Williams portion of this book is that Caleb Williams was so concerned during 2024 in the lead up to the NFL draft about being picked by the Chicago Bears that he and his family, namely his father, considered blowing up the entire NFL draft. They consulted with lawyers to figure out a way around the league's collective bargaining agreement while considering signing with the United Football League. All right. Caleb Williams wondered out loud to confidants, do I want to go there? I don't think I can do it with Shane Waldron, who was the Bears offensive coordinator. The book, which will be coming out this summer or early fall, just offers a detailed account of what it means to be a quarterback at various levels from high school to college. But the best parts in this book that are highlighted in stories that are now out everywhere are about Caleb Williams and specifically Caleb's father, Carl Williams. The book offers an inside look at their state of mind. Carl Williams went to great lengths to try to circumvent the NFL draft, Wickersham writes, wanting to give his son an opportunity to choose his future employer. The Bears had not drafted a star quarterback since the 1980s, and their recent draft selections of Mitch Trubisky and Justin Fields just didn't pan out. Carl Williams, the father of Caleb Williams, was worried about that with the franchise's history, stadium uncertainty, and offensive performances under then head coach Matt Eberflus. Caleb Williams wouldn't have the organizational support to succeed, Carl Williams thought. He told Wickersham in this book, along with several agents, I don't want my son playing for the Bears. And he started to look for a way around the league's collective bargaining agreement. He spoke with Archie Manning, who helped Eli Manning assert his control back in 2004. He met with labor lawyers and agents and even considered whether his son could sign with the United Football League and become an unrestricted NFL free agent in 2025, which would give him the ability to pick a team. In addition to the draft process, Carl Williams vented about the rookie wage scale, which could lock his son into a team that drafted him for up to 8 years, right? Do the math on that. 4 years, fifth-year option, and then franchise tags for up to 3 years after. So, yes, the system does allow for a first-round pick to be basically held in that one place, paid well once you get to the fifth-year option and franchise tag years. But he calculated that it could mean hundreds of millions of dollars in lost market value income. He basically said the following to Wickersham. Well, more than basically, this is a quote. Quote, the rookie cap is just unconstitutional. It's the worst piece of S I've ever read. It's the worst in sports history. Closed quote. Here's something that I didn't know. During his final season at USC, Caleb Williams, unsure what he wanted to do as he approached the 2024 draft. At the Combine that year, he met with Kevin O'Connell, the Minnesota Vikings head coach. The two hit it off, and Caleb Williams began to dream of what it would be like to play for Minnesota. Quote, I need to go to the Vikings, he told his father. Let's do it, his father replied. Both Caleb and Carl knew that a trade to a divisional rival was extremely unlikely, and Bears GM Ryan Poles stood firm, telling Caleb and Carl Williams, quote, "We're drafting you no matter what," closed quote. That left one option, according to Seth Wickersham in this book, to publicly attack the Bears in the city of Chicago, hoping that it would make this situation untenable, similar to what Jack and John Elway did with the Baltimore Colts back in 1983. I'll just add, and I've added this many times, when the John Elway situation in 1983 comes up, John Elway was a very, very highly sought after baseball prospect and had the option of going to play Major League Baseball with the New York Yankees if he didn't want to play football. That's not something that Eli Manning had. It's not something that Shedeur Sanders had. It's not something that Caleb Williams had. But with respect to going the nuclear option route, Carl Williams told Wickersham, "He's worried about me taking bullets. I don't care. I just don't agree with this S, you know. I'm more interested in making sure that he can do what he wants to do," closed quote. But Caleb was concerned that if they did try and the Bears refused to trade him, it would make the situation worse. In the end, Caleb Williams told Wickersham, quote, "I wasn't ready to nuke the city," closed quote. After a pre-draft visit to the Bears facility, Williams walked away believing that he could be a part of the process to turn the franchise around. And he told his father, quote, "I can do it for this team, Dad. I'm going to the Bears," closed quote. Wow. We knew that there were obviously issues, with the Bears and the desire to play for the Bears. And the father, remember, early on wanted equity. This is why, the Shedeur Sanders conversation is just so different, because Caleb Williams and his father were, apparently a problem for the Chicago Bears. But did the Bears and anybody else decide not to draft him number one overall? No, because the talent was too tantalizing. It was just too great. So they took him number one, even though they knew that he wasn't thrilled and that the father wasn't thrilled that he was going there. Look, it turns out the Eberflus-Shane Waldron combo wasn't very good. Listen to this from this book, this Seth Wickersham book, about last year in the midst of the Bears losing 10 straight games, which, remember, started with the Hail Mary. Seasons in which both Eberflus and Waldron were fired. At times, Williams said in this book that he would be watching film alone with no instruction or guidance from the coaches. Quote, "No one tells me what to watch. I just turn it on," close quote. Now, this situation upcoming is hopefully much different for him. The hiring of Ben Johnson in January. Caleb Williams was excited. He said, being able to be in this position, being able to have a first year the way I did, ups and downs, and then to be able to come in here, be as confident as I was last year, or possibly even more so, and be able to get here with the group that we now have. I really can't wait to get to work with these guys, closed quote. Yeah. That is, look, if you're from these parts and you've been around these parts, you've heard some stories about the Caleb Williams father, Carl, and being super influential and super involved. But they didn't ultimately nuke Chicago and blow up the process. I don't know what they could have done, Chicago, other than pull themselves out of the draft and then try to put themselves back into the draft the following season, go back and play college football or play in the United Football League. The United Football League would not have then been, Chicago would not have lost the rights to draft Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams would have had to go back to college for them to lose that possibility, unless they were the worst team the next year. And remember, they had the number one pick because they had Carolina's pick from the Bryce Young trade up the year before. It's going to be an interesting thing, man. Chicago Chicago got a lot of love on the schedule this year. Ben Johnson's first game, Monday Night Football, standalone Monday Night Football, week 1. They've got a big, Fox doubleheader game against Dallas early in the season. They got a Monday nighter against Washington here. They're playing in the Black Friday game against the Eagles. Going to be an interesting team, Chicago. They have some talent, and now maybe they'll have the coaching offensively. But, that with Caleb Williams and DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, and they added Luther Burden. I loved him. Cole Kmet, they drafted Colston Loveland. I think they should have drafted Tyler Warren. I think he was the better tight end. Joe Thuney they added to an offensive line. Jonah Jackson, and then they've got some good defensive talent as well. New coaching staff. We'll see how long it takes for, it to work, but there's no other quarterback in town. I think Case Keenum's the backup, or is the kid from Shepherd College still the backup? Guy from Shepherd who played really well at the D2 level. Tyson Badgett, Shepherd College. They got a decent roster, Chicago. I'm telling you, that NFC North is certainly right now going into the season the division that everybody thinks is the most loaded top to bottom. I don't know what Minnesota will be like. I think about Minnesota, you basically are going to be starting a rookie quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. What are you going to get from J.J. McCarthy in his rookie year? Maybe you get what Bo Nix gave you. I doubt you get what Jaden Daniels gave you. But not bad having Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson, et cetera. And remember, they got injured last year. Offensive line, they lost Darisaw. He'll be back. And defensively, that was a good football team until the end of the year. Till the end of the year. And they really kind of lost ground towards the end of the year. John Allen added to that defensive front. By the way, if you look at, the Minnesota roster and depth chart, John Allen's penciled in as a starter on that defensive front. They're pretty much a 3-4 base with Harrison Phillips at the nose. And they got Hargrave on that team with John Allen. And then their linebackers, man, Van Ginkel and Greenard. Really good. All right. We got plenty of time to, parse out the schedule a little bit more, but we did a lot of it today. And it's exciting to see Washington featured as much as they were. They got the most combined primetime and standalone games: Dallas, Washington, Kansas City, each with 8. That's where they are these days. They're up there, highly profiled. Let's hope they end up living up to it. PGA Championship, real quickly right now, you've got 2 players, Steven Yeager and Ryan Gerard, are both at 5 under par. Rory right now struggling at 2 over par through 15 holes, trying to go back to back. That's it for today. Chris Russell's up next.